This presentation will take about 45 minutes and leave about 15 minutes for questions that all of you are welcome to send us through the GoToWebinar question form. The Yubico's history goes back about 200 years ago, when engineer Augustin Ehrensvärd was ennobled by the Swedish king for designing the most innovative fortress of the time, protecting Sweden against Russia. Today, not only Sweden, but people in all countries are facing a new threat. This threat is not only from Russia, and massive buildings and fire weapons can no longer protect us. Jacob Ehrensvärd, directly descended from the Swedish fortress engineer, is the CDO of Yubico, and he's also my husband. We invented the YubiKey with the vision of having one simple and secure key to all internet to protect all internet citizens. 4 years ago, we moved to California to work closely with the internet thought leaders and make this vision a reality. Today, Yubico is a team of about 50 people based in Sweden, US, and UK. We have shipped millions of YubiKeys to the majority of the world countries, all colored in green on this map. And 9 of the top 10 internet companies use YubiKey to secure access to their employees. Last fall, Google launched support through two-step verification security key, and the YubiKey has since become a popular product on Amazon.com for Gmail users. Next slide that I'm happy to hand over to you, John.
On this screen, as we were looking at all the landscape going from high complexity to low security, or high security, low security, complexity, cost, one of the things that we just discussed was the phone being in the middle. What's also in the news and is a lot of activity around the biometric field, and they've made great strides over the years, but still, and probably always will, still have issues with false rejects and to some really rare extents false accepts. The bottom line and the takeaway for biometrics is it's very important, but it doesn't work for everyone all the time. You would always still have to have alternative methods that must be available. Now, Yubico set out with the vision of simplicity, as you heard from Stina. So the question was, how could security be increased while driving complexity and cost out of the equation for both end users and app owners? And so let's take us to the invention of YubiKey. So next slide, please. Thank you. First, the user experience is king. That means if there's anything we've learned over the decades with strong authentication is the user experience really matters. Yubico offers or allows one touch or one tap to perform a wide variety of crypto functions across all platforms. By the time a user is requested to touch their YubiKey, it already knows which protocol to use. So complexity has been the complexity of the end users has been reduced to a touch, and there are no codes to read, no codes to type. Great user experience in our experience leads to great user adoption, and that's exactly what Yubico is experiencing today. Next, U2F enabled YubiKeys are designed for internet scale. So the first, we're dealing with user experience and simple, and next we're dealing with scale issues on internet scale. YubiKeys scale from one-touch registration to a single YubiKey supporting an infinite number of relying parties. Users can now bring their own keys, or BYOK, and relying parties can trust YubiKeys without having to trust one another. As much as we love volume, we believe users only need a primary and backup keys, not one for each account they own. And finally, privacy. YubiKeys in U2F mode are designed with end-user privacy in mind. To understand this, YubiKeys are trusted key generators. Each time a YubiKey is registered with a relying party or a new application, a new private-public key pair is minted for use. Registration process returns the public key along with the key handle, which only that specific YubiKey can use. You can register a YubiKey with multiple multiple Google accounts and even Google cannot tell if the same YubiKey is registered across all of those multiple accounts. Same goes for relying parties. The U2F specification is designed to be unlinkable, such that relying parties cannot collude to link authentication data to track user activity. One single YubiKey could look like 1 million unique YubiKeys if you had the patience to register a single key that many times. So the takeaway on the YubiKey invention should be simplicity, scalability, and privacy. So now let's take a look at some details of what make up Yubico's offering. Starting at the foundation are our hardware platforms which communicate over USB and/or NFC. YubiKeys are capable to enumerate as a keyboard, smart card reader, smart card, and/or an NFC tag. All driverless, all out of the box with no extensions. Currently, U2F is supported only in Chrome with other browsers to follow. Our hardware comes in several form factors, which you've seen on some of the screens, which we refer to as keychain or nano. As the name suggests, a keychain is suitable to reside with physical keys, and the nano is popular for laptop users because it sits flush in the laptop's USB and easily touched. If you find a Google or Facebook employee, most likely you'll find a nano. The hardware layer sits atop our software applets that supports a wide variety of authentication and crypto protocols. These two layers combined result in the finished hardware products that Yubico offers for sale. Supporting these products are a suite of services that Yubico offers as enterprise-grade cloud offerings and open source reference designs for engineers to tailor build to their own services. Yubico's revenue is generated by the hardware products, not the services. Now, a couple of interesting points I'd like to highlight on this screen. First, you'll see the YubiHSM product. The HSM stands for Hardware Security Module, and YubiKeys are designed for people. YubiHSMs are designed for servers. Please go to our website to view the YubiHSM reference manual for further investigation if you're a crypto geek. It's a fun, good read. The second point is the range of authentication products from $18 to $50 that you see here on the screen. The difference between them is the number of protocols each product supports. The U2F key was specially designed for our consumer resale to support the Google security key launch last October. YubiKey Edge supports the U2F and a suite of OTP or one-time password protocols. The most popular OTP choice with our customers today has been the YubiOTP rather than the Open Authentication HOTP. And this is primarily due to self-service registration capabilities among other items. And finally, I want to point you to our premium YubiKey Neo, which supports an additional PIV or OpenPGP applets for traditional smart card PKI authentication and open encryption apps, respectively. The YubiKey Neo is both a smart card reader and a smart card. Now, multiple protocol YubiKeys are proving to be extremely effective in bridging the gap between legacy and modern systems. YubiKey Neos can protect via YubiOTP a consumer's LastPass account, that same user's corporate Salesforce.com account. Again, that same user can use it as a PIV smart card for accessing their corporate Windows environments, and then yet again to access Google for Work accounts via U2F. All three protocols are supported across all apps with a simple touch. All complexity has been removed from the user experience. But enough about the older protocols. Let's take a closer look at U2F. That's what our focus here today is. This is why I am here at Yubico as well, and why I think this is the most important takeaway for you today. If you take a peek at my background, you will see that I've been involved with authentication technology for decades. In the mid-90s, during the dawn of the modern web, we all struggled to leverage public key cryptography to solve scale issues around crypto keys. What we settled on were smart cards plugged into a large infrastructure, or PKI. The problems were many, so we settled on OTP devices and relied on users to type codes based off of symmetric key cryptography. We were stuck for over a decade with OTP as the best practices for strong authentication, despite knowing theoretical vulnerabilities, which I'm sad to say came true. I first saw this U2F protocol when Google and Yubico came into the FIDO Alliance, where I too was a member. I instantly recognized this as the missing piece we had for so long sought to find. I must admit I was somewhat embarrassed by its beautiful simplicity, but now I'm making my amends by working and contributing from inside Yubico. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to back to Jared again for more details and a demo. But for now, let's take a look at the simplicity from a user's perspective on login. If you have a Google account, then this slide is what you will see, or some of the screenshots that you will see once you've enabled 2SV or two-step verification. When you access your Google account, you'll enter your username and password as normal. Google, which is a relying party, excuse me, verifies the account, recognizes a security key has been registered, and then presents a sign-in request to the browser along with instructions for the user to insert and touch their security key. Upon touch, the YubiKey will complete and return the sign request for verification. If correct, the security key is used. If this correct security key is used, access is allowed, and the authentication event is performed in seconds. Now, according to Google and their metrics, the two-step verification process that has been measured to be 4 times faster than any other form of strong authentication, such as the Google Authenticator or SMS. Now, please note the above image of the touch on the right-hand side there. So you can relate to the experience when Jared demos. I'd like to now turn it back over to Jared, our VP of Solutions, and he will provide more details and give a live demo.
Thank you, John. So I'd like to show a live demo of the experience from the user, and I'm just to show you how the user can add the security key to their accounts. So if I were to log into the Gmail account, you would typically put your username and password, and after that, you would, if you set up two-step verification, you'll be asked to put in a code, either through the Google Authenticator or with an SMS message that you receive in your phone. Now, if you set it up with the security key, I'll be asked to now insert my security device, in this case the YubiKey, and right now what you'll be seeing is that it's actually flashing, that you actually can't see, and so I'm actually touching the device, and after I just touch the device, I'm logged in. So really behind the scenes is the public key cryptography that I'll discuss in a few minutes, but I'll show everyone how quickly it is to add a security key. You go to your accounts, and under two-step verification, you will now see the ability for you to add security keys. You see a new tab on the top right-hand side called Security Keys. This has been introduced in the Gmail ecosystem late October last year. And what you can see here is that I can manage my security keys. One of the things that I can do is to add another security key. You've seen 2 security keys here on my account for 2 different devices. I have also a nano form factor device. So if I were to add another security key and I register it, it's actually flashing. I touch it, and I'm registered. So that's how easy it is to register another security key. And I can use this key now as a backup key for my other computers. So why is this U2F protocol a much better protocol than some of the other authentication systems or solutions out there. First off, when we deal with the protocol itself, U2F has really took a lot of lessons from the previous protocols in the market that exist today, and also overcome a number of challenges that were introduced because of the implementation, as John Haggett has discussed earlier. Now, with any authentication protocol, one of the most important things about the protocol has to be secure. And it's not just because it just needs to have stronger algorithms, but it really needs to handle modern-day attacks and threats. So with that in mind, the U2F protocol, one of the founding principles was to really prevent the phishing and the man-in-the-middle attacks. And this is where U2F really shines, which is building specific parameters in the protocol to prevent these attacks. The next element of privacy really deals with a key element in scaling an authentication protocol. As we know, more and more users are concerned that relying parties can link authentication to them, and it's vital that any security that we introduce does not breach that privacy. So we have privacy built into U2F protocol, and one of the things that you can think about is when you create a username and password, the relying party does not really know whether you created the username and password as yourself or somebody else. And we need to keep this form of privacy as we scale and we introduce the U2F protocol. So one of the important criteria is that when you associate your device to your account, the relying party cannot pinpoint the specific device that you use. And that is part of the protocol. The other part of the U2F protocol is really to have it available in native platforms. So this is evident in U2F and Gmail, and the Chrome as the client, being that when you install and use the latest Chrome since Chrome 38, it actually has U2F built in. So Chrome actually has U2F built in since last October. And when this happens, the user does not have to install any specific client software or install any specific drivers. It just works out of the box. The next element of building a better authentication protocol is really something that can scale to the masses, and scaling not just from a secure privacy perspective, but something that is really affordable for an end user that can use that one single device for many different services, and the option to buy maybe a number of devices as backups. So in the ecosystem of the FIDO U2F, we will see a range of different authenticators ranging from a different price point, but all something that it's very cost that does not prevent you from going out and buying another authenticator. Finally, the most important criteria that we really built the U2F protocol on is usability. As we've seen time and time again, you can introduce the most secure systems or protocols or solutions, but if the user does not accept the usability, if the user does not want to use the device, then essentially they would go and circumvent the usage of it with simple writing down codes and so on and so forth. So we need to build simple authentication protocols that is for the user and for the mass market. So in this situation, the U2F protocol allows one single device to be registered with multiple services, multiple relying parties. In our case, the YubiKey, just with a simple touch. So I dive down a little bit on the specific implementation of the protocol. The core of U2F really stems from the public key cryptography operations. First, the server will send a challenge, and it's because this is a public key cryptography protocol, the device, in this case, would have to sign something. In the registration process, the device actually generates the key pairs. Besides generating the key pairs, it will also create a key handle. Now, the key pair generation and key handle generation is very specific to the service, which means that key handles are per service oriented per user account. And this allows that one device to work with many different services. Fourth step, the device signs the challenge and client information. The client information here relates to specific items or parameters that help with what we talked about, high security, phishing attacks, as well as man-in-the-middle attacks. So there's specific parameters like the origin and the channel ID, which binds the TLS channel, making it extremely difficult to circumvent the protocol. Once the server receives and verifies the device, the signature of the attestation is verified. And the way it does it is every device manufacturer will have their own specific metadata on the device model, not the specific device, the device model. And so the server or the relying party can verify whether that specific device model is accepted by the relying party. So as from a server's perspective, for example, a bank could do some additional verification whether it accepts a certain device manufacturer's authenticator. Finally, the server would store the key handle and the public key so that it can do the verification of the authentication step. During authentication, a very similar process happens. The server sends the challenge with the key handle. And the really interesting thing here, and the beauty of the protocol, is that the device, once it receives the key handle, can unwrap or derive the private key again, which means that the device could essentially work with an infinite amount of different services because it's not storing the private key on the device. And after it unwraps the private key, it does its signature together with the client information, preventing the phishing attacks and the man-in-the-middle attacks, and sends it back to the server. After which the server can verify the signature is correct based on the stored public key. This way, only that specific device can sign that specific challenge for the relying party, and that's how you authenticate. So the registration and authentication are two operations that is specified in the FIDO U2F 1.0 protocol, and it really is an elegant protocol in the sense that the device is the one that mints the key pairs as opposed to the services minting the key pairs. During the FIDO 1.0 specification, the USB transport protocol has been defined. We're working in the working group right now to release the next set of specifications to be able to communicate over mobile devices, and that includes both NFC and Bluetooth, with the same user experience that one would expect with the simplicity of the touch being a tap on the registered device. Here's the current state of the FIDO U2F implementation in the current ecosystem. We see a whole host of different available tiers in what the ecosystem is providing, all the way from online systems to open source servers. The interesting thing here about the U2F protocol is that it's embraced by both the open source community as well as enterprise server applications. And in order for a protocol to take off, we need obviously additional services and providers to make it available. So this is about 6 months into the release of 1.0 specifications, and we see a rich set of implementations across the board. So how does this relate for the Google Drive for Work? Gmail was made available with FIDO U2F and the security keys last October. Google, about 2 weeks ago, released Google Drive for Work with security key support with two-step verification. And they provided quite a number of additional administration tools so that enterprises can now control the security keys within the environment. That includes the rollout, the provisioning, and the revocation. And it also provides some additional audit capabilities and monitoring capabilities within the platform. And this allows both the end user, the individual employee, and partners to use the Google for Drive ecosystem and bring their own U2F devices. We feel that the Google ecosystem today is really a good model and reference for how enterprise should be rolling out U2F authentication protocols within the system. We can see 3 pillars here that needs to be completed, which is the backend, the server side, the client, in this case the Google Chrome, and the security devices, which Yubico is very proud to be part of. The number of YubiKeys that support U2F is growing, and the current list include the YubiKey Edge, the YubiKey Neo, and the security key, which supports the U2F. With that, I'd like to turn it over back to John that will say a few words about how YubiKeys and the phone can coexist.
Thank you, Jared. Yeah, get the next slide. Again, this is John Haggard back again. And before we wrap up, we get asked a lot of questions about YubiKeys versus phones and why one is better than the other. And the answer is, it depends. It depends on what you're doing and what the user environment is. The mobile phones and U2F devices are rather complementary than competitive. Each has its rightful place in a comprehensive solution set. If you have a Google account, you will discover that the 2SV support that the U2F security keys are designated as your primary authenticator. Google Authenticator and the phone via SMS are secondary methods. They are used when the security key cannot be used. So if you're in Google environment, that's the hierarchy of it. And the reason is simple. Google knows through experience that U2F security key authentications are far stronger. Not all 2SV authentications are equal. Only U2F devices, for example, can participate in the advanced proposed token ID binding protocols that Jared mentioned briefly a minute ago. And Google has implemented this protocol has enabled all of its properties for well over a year and is now working with Microsoft to advance through the IETF standards that protocol. This is, however, a subject for another day, and if you're interested to hear more, let us know, and we'll be glad to provide you some details on how a U2F device participates in that proposed standard. In the case of YubiKeys, YubiKeys are extremely rugged devices that just simply always work. Phone as authenticator complements U2F for use cases that have yet to either be U2F enabled or when a user has been separated from their YubiKeys. In this case, our experience has shown that users quickly rediscover the penalties for having to look up and find their phone in the app on the phone or wait for an SMS code to complete the sign-in process. In closing, we have seen several mobile authenticators, in closing on this topic, that is, we have seen several mobile authenticators that go well beyond simple SMS or OTP codes, and they are to be commended. They address a certain use case, reducing user friction to, in some cases, near zero. Our experience is customers blend mobile authenticators with YubiKeys so they have all use cases covered. Sometimes YubiKeys are primary, and other times they function as backups. We really don't care as long as your accounts are safe. Our bottom line is we promote all secure methods to create a functional authentication ecosystem, and we let users pick the ones they love to use. Next slide, please. So before we break for Q&A, there are some reference links here for Google's implementation. You see some U2F protocol specification link. The FIDO Alliance is a very important place to go and understand the ecosystem and where you can go play if you're a developer. One of Yubico's strongest assets is the reference designs and codes that we make available to the community. We make this available through open source libraries. Go out to GitHub and you can learn quite a bit and develop your own support for the U2F protocol. In summary, I hope we have highlighted the importance of the U2F protocol to our industry. It matters. So dig into the specs and you will be pleasantly surprised, as I was when I first saw them come through the doors at FIDO. As for Yubico, the takeaways for YubiKey I hope you take, for the YubiKey invention, I hope you take away that our values, the simplicity, scalability, and privacy. These are attributes and values that are baked into each and every YubiKey. I'm going to now turn it back over to Jared to answer a few of your questions.
Thank you, John. So we've had a few questions over the chat. I'll take most of them. Let's take one about how does it relate with LastPass. So the YubiKey, as John mentioned, supports multiple protocols. There are 2 devices today that we have made available that supports both OTP, one-time passcodes, as well as the U2F protocol. So for example, the Edge device supports these 2 protocols, and then the new device supports both OTP, U2F, and other smart card capabilities like PIV. So when you want to use it with LastPass, you set what we call the composite mode, which enables OTP and U2F to function at the same time. And depending on the website that you want to use, if the website or the service does not support U2F, by touching the YubiKey, it will generate a one-time pass code. If the website supports U2F, what will happen is that the server will send a challenge to the YubiKey, and the YubiKey will start to flash. And when you see a flashing YubiKey, and when you touch the YubiKey, it's actually signing the challenge using the U2F protocol. So depending on what the service has set up for, touching the YubiKey would basically authenticate with the correct protocol. Another question relates to what other browsers besides Chrome supports U2F. There's a very active discussion right now in the Mozilla community. We believe that they would release something sometime this year. As we know, the open source community has embraced this protocol, and a number of them are part of the Firefox Mozilla team as well. So we hope to see that browser have U2F support in a very short time. Question relating to the U2F protocol in terms of how many servers can handle one device. So if you were to think of the U2F protocol, it really is a many-to-many scenario, which means, let's take, for example, a service, whether it be a shopping site and let's take a shopping site and a mail site like Gmail. You have one device. The device during registration process would create a key handle and basically the public key to send to the specific service. So in this case, one device will mint 2 different key pairs, one for the shopping site and one for the mail site, so that one device can work with multitudes of different services. Now, it's also true that the same service may allow you, say for example, the Gmail site, allow you to register more than one key. So as a user, your user account, you can have multiple keys, multiple different security keys associated with your Gmail account or whatever service that you have bound it to. So in that sense, one device can be used with multiple accounts for multiple different services. We'll take another question here in regards to how does the YubiKey work with the smartphone and Gmail. Today, you can set up an app-specific password with your phone and Gmail account. In a way, this binds your account to the phone when you set up the U2F security protocol. Later this year, Google intends to also make support for the other transports as part of the FIDO U2F specification to be able to communicate over NFC and Bluetooth. That allows you to have stronger second factor authentication over the mobile device. Now, it's also been always the goal that because the authentication protocol is very strong now, what the services can do is to trust the device that you authenticate against, because you have strongly authenticated the user. So we've seen this model evolve, which means that you don't have to always ask the user to authenticate every time they are using the service. And we can see this today even with Gmail and the U2F security key setup, which is, if you set it up with the security key, you can set up so that you don't have to log in for 30 days, because you have strongly authenticated yourself and the device, and it will take obviously some specific information on the device that binds it to the account. Another question here is, can I use the semantic VIP with YubiKeys? Yes, we have a specific YubiKey that works with semantic VIP. Semantic VIP supports both HOTP mode, which can be programmed onto the YubiKey. So as John talked about, the different protocols, OTP, U2F, and the smart card, in OTP mode, you can create multiple different authentication OTPs, being either Yubico OTP that works with the LastPass, or oath-based HOTP that some sites also support. We can also support actually TOTP that will require a helper app to be on your device, which we also provide for the community. A question regarding the specific device, Edge and Nanos. So if you look at the, let's think about different keys have different protocols enabled on them. The basic being the security key, which is U2F. And then you have the Edge devices. And then you have the Neo devices. So the Neo is the one step up, which now supports OTP and U2F. And then the Neo supports OTP, U2F, and also the smart card capabilities like PIV and OpenPGP. We'll take another question here, clarifying whether the YubiKey is a biometric device. So the YubiKey is not a biometric device. Instead, it uses a capacitive sensor that is activated by a little bit of your electricity found in the human body to allow it to make the charge and then able to authenticate. So it is extremely simple to use YubiKey. That's kind of the takeaway. Once you have the device, then you can authenticate with just a touch. So the natural question I think people would ask is, so what happens if I lost my YubiKey? And the simple answer is, if you were to lose your house keys or your credit card, that will fall under the same kind of category. We always advise that you have backup keys for accounts that you associate YubiKeys with, just general good practices. But also the beauty of the protocol allows you to easily just delete the keys associated with the account, just like you would change your password, you would just delete the key, and the service would not know specifically which key or which device you removed it from, because it just has a key handle. So the takeaway from that perspective is YubiKey is something you have, and you need to obviously use that as one of the factors to log in. In the case of Gmail, the first factor is a password. We have actually seen other implementations where the first factor may not be a username and password. It could be, for example, a location. It can also be basically other mechanisms that allow for the first factor. So think of the YubiKey as something you have in the scheme of what you know, who you are, and what you have. We'll take another one in regards to the, let's see here, the Yubi Authenticator app on the phone. So we have a Yubico Authenticator app on the Android device. And what you can actually do with the Yubico Authenticator is to replace the Google Authenticator. So for sites that still have not support U2F but supports Google authenticators. We actually have a Yubico authenticator that actually uses the Yubico device to store the keys outside the phone as opposed to having the keys stored on the phone. And the way it works is very similar to the Google authenticator, which is you scan the QR code and then the Yubico authenticator would ask you to, in this case, tap the Neo device. The Neo device has NFC capability. So it would actually transfer the keys onto the Neo device, and then from then onwards, if you wanted to get your 6-digit code, like the Google authenticator, the Yubico authenticator will ask you to tap your Neo device over NFC on your Android phone. So it's a very secure way if you wanted to store your secrets outside your device, in this case the Android phone, which is the compute device. A question about how many OTPs can be programmed on one YubiKey. So it depends on what type of OTP that you're referring to. So if I just discussed about the TOTP scenario, just like the Google authenticator, the Yubico authenticator with Neo, I've seen that there's no really practical limitation. We've seen 100 keys easily stored there. Obviously, there's some practical limitations on just being able to read all the codes on just one device. In terms of Yubico OTP, or what we call HOTP, which is counter-based OTPs, we can store two slots on the Yubico on the YubiKey devices, and it's available on the Edge as well as the Neo. The way it works is that one touch would generate the OTP for the first slot, and the longer touch would generate the OTP for the second slot. And this is configurable depending on how you want to set up the experience for the end user. Let's see, John, you want to cover one of the questions as well, John?
Yes, this is John. So I have a question that came in that said, what happens if I lose my YubiKey? And so in the U2F world, it is dependent upon how each relying party chooses to implement lost key in their particular system. So instead of talking about the wide variety of choices, let's just talk about what Google does. So if you have a Google account and you've registered 2, 3, or 4 keys, and your employees, if you're at Google for work, and you're somebody in your enterprise has lost keys, either the user or the administrator can go in and delete those keys and just simply take that particular key, put it in the trash bucket, and it's no longer used. If that was your only security key, if your only U2F device, the next time you tried to log on, you would need to go through your standard user ID password. Then, because you don't have a key, you would click Use My Authenticator, and you would start exercising your backup plan. And the backup plan in Google hierarchy is the next thing to do is go for your Google Authenticator, so your smartphone with your Google Authenticator app. If you don't have that, then you fall back to your SMS code for your registered phone, your backup phone. And if you don't have that, then you fall back into the 10 backup codes that you used when you first created your account. And so you go through those backups. Once you're authenticated through one of those backup mechanisms, you can then freely go in and re-add new security keys. So I frequently throw all of my security keys away, particularly when I'm going to a conference like when we were at RSA. And so I have no keys. I add one to it, and then as I'm talking with people, I will add more keys, up to 10 that I can support on my particular Google account. And when I'm done, I just throw them away. When I pick up YubiKeys, because I'm here in Yubico, I touch a whole bunch of different ones, and I can just pick one up and register it, and I can now use it to gain access to my account. So the lost key scenario is pretty flexible. The bottom line to it is that you fall back to your backups, you get yourself strongly authenticated, and then you re-add your keys to get you back to normal. Another question that came in is, how long will the YubiKey last, having the gold area exposed? And I'm not too sure we know how long it can last, because we've had YubiKeys from 7 years out that are still working just fine. It is an extremely rugged and durable product. We have people do all kinds of interesting, imaginative things to test that out, ranging from boiling water to freezing tests to a whole number of things. So of all of the devices that are available on the market today, I would bet that YubiKey has got to be the most rugged and toughest of all of them. So it's a pretty tough product to use. So until we get to 20 years, I'm not too sure we're going to be able to answer that question yet. Jared, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, we'll take a final question here, and this regards to just specifically about Gmail and the use of passwords. So I think we've heard the question before. It's that we're still relying on passwords, and how does that evolve into something that is beyond passwords? So the basis of the U2F protocol is strong and universal second-factor authentication. The specifications are very clear that it requires a first factor, and we typically today assume that the first factor, or most cases, the first factor is username and password. But I think I mentioned it earlier that the specification does not say that the first factor has to be username and passwords. So I cannot speak for Google, but we know they have a pretty aggressive plan to phase out the use of passwords over time, using something as the foundation of the U2F protocol. So you will start to see the U2F protocol evolve into many subset of different, I would say, use cases. And the reason why we can do that is because when you start off with strong authentication methods using public key cryptography that can scale, really we look to even you guys to be creative in the way that U2F can be implemented beyond the current ecosystem. And we've seen actually a host of new solutions coming on the market that we cannot announce that will allow the use of U2F in systems outside web online authentication. So as you've noted, the Gmail is using still two-step verification, and two-step verification is using U2F. But as we move forward in time, you start to see that the reliance on the second factor become the primary factor and slowly phase that away. But one thing that we can do today, if you have systems today that could easily do, keeping still very strong security, is to reduce the complexity of the password. In fact, we have systems that we have built that just uses a PIN. And in fact, if you just use the PIN for multiple services that have U2F, you still maintain a very, very high level of security without introducing the necessary complexity of complicated passwords. So even with U2F today, you can reduce your requirements for strong password to be something much simpler that users can actually remember with the U2F ecosystem.
So thank you, John and Jared and everyone else who's been listening today. This presentation will shortly be emailed to you, and if you have any follow-up questions, please email sales@yubico.com, and we are here to help. Let's not let the fraudsters limit the potential of what the internet is and can be. Thank you.